episode 143, Becoming Better Humans. Welcome to Gratitude Geek, the relationship marketing podcast, helping micropreneurs find your micro-influencer magic. I'm your host, Candace Rodardi, and this week I'm joined by podcaster Kevin Palmieri. Kevin is the founder and co-host of the Next Level University podcast. In his early life, Kevin found success, but after a brush with suicide, he realized he wasn't living the life he truly wanted. He became passionate about self-improvement and decided to make it his life's purpose to make a positive impact on as many people as possible whilst inspiring them to become better humans. Today, his podcast is in the top 100 with over 1,000 episodes and listeners in more than 125 countries. Kevin has taken his life to the next level and achieved both personal and professional success. Welcome, Kevin.
Candace, thank you so very much for having me. I appreciate it. I'm excited to chat with you.
I always want to talk about being a better human, but before we do, hey, Gratitude Geeks, the biggest card and gift sending holiday of the year is drawing ever more near. Release the stress of your holiday card sending and get it done now. You can make your holiday card and choose a specific date to send it. That means your stress over your holiday cards can be gone in just a few minutes for the rest of the season. Learn how at relationshipmarketingcoach.com. Tell us your unique story. How'd you get to where you are?
Yeah, I was raised by a single mom and a grandmother. I didn't meet my father until I was 27. That's a very important part of my story because I think that shaped me into the man that you see in front of you today. Childhood was pretty normal. I rode bikes with my friends. We played sports, nothing too crazy. What really shifted for me was in my mid-20s. Everything up until that point was pretty normal. I didn't go to college because I knew I don't want to go down that route. I don't know what I want to do in my life, but I do know that's not it. So I job hopped from job to job, and I worked at a gas station. I worked at a hospital cleaning floors and toilets. I was a truck driver, a forklift operator, personal trainer. I was many, many different things. But eventually I got this unique job in what's called the weatherization industry. All that means is we go into a building and we make it more energy efficient. So we go into a school, we work in the attic, we work on the doors, we work on the windows. The beautiful part of this job was, since I was working for the state and at times government on grants, I got anywhere from $60 to $120 an hour. No college degree, cool, I'll take it. So if you zoomed into my life when I was 25, you would see a man who had a sports car, a man who had a model girlfriend, a man who had just won a bodybuilding show, so I was in the best shape of my life, high-paying job, new apartment, all amazing things. He must be happy. I was not happy. I was not very fulfilled. I was very insecure. I was not confident. And I didn't really see that I had a very bright future. It might have seemed that way from the outside, but internally, I did not feel that way. One day, my girlfriend came to me and she said, I want to move across the country. We lived on the East Coast of the United States. She wanted to live in California and live the Californian dream. I gave her every reason in the book why she shouldn't do it, Candace. And she ended up leaving me, chasing her dreams like she should have. And when she left, that was my initial rock bottom, because here I am living all by myself. I just lost something that I didn't realize how much I put value into. And I started to understand that if I felt happy internally, it was only because I had a bunch of nice things on the outside. Now, unfortunately, I didn't learn my lesson very quickly. So when my girlfriend left, I said, all right, let me figure out what all this means. Am I lovable? How is this all going to work? And then I said, you know what? I think I need to go make more money. I haven't made enough money yet. That's the problem. So I said the next year, we're coming up on the next year when I turn 26. I said, I'm going to make more money this year than I have in my entire life, and all my problems are going to go away. So that next year starts. I get a promotion to a foreman at my company, which means as a foreman, I start the job and I am on the job until it's done. It's till the very, very finale of that job. So I'm working a ton of hours. We're traveling all over the place. I worked in New Jersey. I worked in Pennsylvania. I worked in Connecticut. I worked in New York. I worked in Virginia. And I lived in New Hampshire. So all of those are 3 to 15 hours away. So fast forward to the end of that year, I was on the road for 10 months out of the 12 months. Every single week, I was living in a hotel, driving many, many, many hours, working different shifts, not sleeping for 24 hours on cycle. That was pretty normal for me. But I opened my final pay stub and I made $100,000 at 26 with no college degree. Boom. We did it. We're successful. And I had another one of those moments where I realized, oh, I did it again. I put all of my internal happiness and well-being and fulfillment into external things, into materialistic things that aren't going to bring that to me. So in that moment, I realized that for most of my life, I had lived unconsciously. The opposite of unconscious is hyperconscious. I started a podcast called the Hyperconscious Podcast. And in that moment, I quite literally stopped caring about my job. I did not want to travel anymore to make money. I was not into it. I had already reached the goal. It didn't bring me what I want. I was done. I was over it. So I have this podcast and I have this job. I stopped caring about the job. I start caring about the podcast. I started calling out of work. I'd start leaving the job site early. I'd start showing up late. It got to the point where I would have to be in New Jersey, which is like 6 hours from where I lived, Monday morning at 7 a.m. on the job site. I would sleep in my bed from 9 p.m. on Sunday until like midnight. I'd get up and I'd drive straight to the job site, and then I'd work an 8-hour day because I was so homesick. I was just sick of being on the road. Kept getting worse. It kept getting worse. I just felt stuck. I didn't know what to do. My rock bottom basement moment that shifted everything for me forever. I woke up at 5:15 in a hotel in New Jersey, sat up, slid to the edge of the bed. I'm lacing up my work boots. I'd done this 1,000 times, but that morning was a little bit different. Something felt different. It was like there was 10 televisions on in my head at the same time, and every single one was on a different station. And one was saying, you're stuck here forever. I know you want to leave, but you're never going to make this kind of money again. You can't leave here. If you do leave, what will your friends think? Your friends all look up to you because you make a lot of money. If you do leave, what will your family think? Your family looks up to you because you make a lot of money. And if you do leave, are you going to ride this podcast thing out into the sunset? That's most likely not going to happen for you. Doesn't happen for many people. In that moment, I felt that if I was to take my life, I would take my problems with me. Now, one of the things I talk a lot about is the importance of the circle around you, the quality of the circle around you. I had a very, very important mentor to me that I messaged that day. Alan is now my business partner. And I told him what I was dealing with. I told him that I was struggling. And I told him how dark things had gotten for me. And he said, Kevin, over the last couple of years, your awareness has raised a lot. You've worked on yourself a lot, but your environments have really remained the same. I think it's time for you to make a change. And I think it's time for you to change your environment. So 3 or 4 months later, I ended up leaving my job and becoming a very, very broke entrepreneur, trying to figure all this out. And I was podcasting and we were interviewing people and trying to figure out how to get clients. But then we had gone on over the last 5.5 years to get to where we are today. And now we have a multi-6-figure podcast and 1,000+ episodes, 1,100 episodes. So all of that started from a lot of pain and the fear of regret and being out of alignment with who I wanted to be. But I am the most fulfilled I have ever been now. And I think it's because I get to help and I get to impact every single day. So that is my mission. And that is my story in a nutshell.
There are so many things to unpack there. So first of all, when I introduced you, I should have said professional podcaster instead of podcaster, because there is a huge difference. Do you know the numbers? Are there like a million different podcasts?
There's roughly 3 million different podcasts. And out of the 3 million, 75% are no longer in production.
Yeah. And how many of those have less than 10 episods? Do you know that number?
Vast majority.
Yeah.
Not off the top of my head. Yeah. But I know we're in like the 0.0000001%, all things considered. Yeah.
But what's really sad is me with 143 episodes is in the 0.0003, one less zero than you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing is like, it's weird for me, Candace, because when people introduce me, they're like, I'm not close to you. And it's like, I don't care. Don't worry about being close to me. The fact that you have 143 episodes is 133 more than most people make it. So you're already winning if you can just keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. I've actually been doing this for a long time. I just took a little vacation. I want to go back to the very first thing that you talked about. And that was when you were working in the energy efficiency business. So energy efficiency has a lot to do with being a better human. It really does. And I'm not talking about in terms of making your home more energy efficient. I'm talking about making you as a human more energy efficient. Do you want to unpack that?
Yeah, I think that what I was doing was saving money from leaking out of buildings. But when Candace is saying that, I think as a human being, we have positive energy and we have negative energy. And you have to make sure that there's not a lot of negative energy coming into your space. And you have to make sure that you're putting out positive energy to get that back into your own atmosphere. What's very interesting, Candace, is what I have really started to understand and what I have really focused on learning over the last few years is how people's relationships affect them without them actually knowing. One of my favorite questions, and if you're listening to this, this is a tough question, but it's a very valuable one. Are the people in your life the best from your past or the best for your future? When I talk about having positive energy in your world, in your life, in your orbit, that's what I'm talking about. A lot of us have people in our lives because they've always been in our lives. We used to do this together. We used to do that. We used to go here. We used to be this. Where are they now? And are they actually helping you get to the future version that you want to get to? One of the most challenging things in the world is relationships, but that's also where we are getting and giving most of our energy. So to Candace's point, understanding the efficiency of your energy is very important.
So I'm thinking about the people that are still in my life from my past. So I'm 50. How old am I? I'm 50. What year is it? I'm 52 years old. So I have a lot in my past. However, the 25 of those 50 years, I have been an entrepreneur. So to go beyond before the before time, the way back time, I worked in the outdoor industry, and I had great relationships in the outdoor industry with a lot of really amazing people. And who's left from those relationships all these years later are a handful of people who are doing things extraordinary. That they may still be in the outdoor industry, but they're people who are doing extraordinary things today outside of what we did together when we worked together. And so it's amazing to me that I've kept these relationships intact, but it also makes a lot of sense that I've kept those relationships intact and not the ones that were not the relationships with people who were not moving forward in their life.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's hard though. I mean, that's one of the hardest things in the world is having that logical. I understand even when I say that, I know it can come off as cold and calculated, but I want you to win. I want you to have the future that you're working so hard for. And sometimes you have to ask yourself, can I actually get that future with these people in the boat with me? Can I get to the destination if I'm rowing in the direction that these people are rowing? And oftentimes the biggest thing holding people back is the people around them. Unfortunately, I wish it wasn't set up that way, but oftentimes you hang out with the people you used to hang out with, not necessarily the people you should hang out with for a brighter future. And again, I've dealt with that just like everybody else, but I'm grateful I've made the decisions I have. Is it painful? Yes. Is there a potential for regret? Yes. But I think in my mind, I would rather regret losing somebody than not accomplishing my goals. That's just the agreement I have with myself.
Well, you can also appreciate the time that you spent together, be very grateful for it because you did learn lessons, release it, and move on. And that doesn't mean you have to completely sever all ties with the person. It just means there's stages in your life, and the stage that you shared with that person is over.
Yep. You can reallocate time. That's what I say. You can reallocate time.
All right, let's talk about hyperconsciousness.
Sure.
Because you're the first person who's ever said that term that I can think of. So talk to me about what that means.
By definition, and I was so angry when I realized it was already in the dictionary because my goal was to put it in the dictionary. I was so upset. But by definition, I believe it means acutely aware, understanding everything at a deeper level. So when I say hyperconsciousness, what I'm really trying to put out there is you're in charge of your decisions. You're not getting somewhere and saying, wow, how did I get here? You're getting somewhere and saying, I got here as a result of me understanding that I was insecure around this person. I villainized them. I ran from them. Hyperconsciousness is you being so aware of yourself that everything else starts to make sense. So the analogy or the example I use is I got to a point in my life where being around certain people who are a lot smarter than me, I would get insecure and I would villainize them. How dare Candace know more about business than I? Oh, Candace must be this type of person, some type of person, a negative person, an arrogant person. When in reality, I just felt insecure by what somebody else knew that I didn't. two options. I vilify or villainize that person and never learn from them, or I reflect and say, okay, why did I feel that way? Oh, because I felt insecure in that moment. And instead of taking that mirror as a piece of feedback and go get better with it, I just villainize Candace because it was easier in that moment. If you can have conversations with yourself in real time about what's happening emotionally, that is such a cheat code because you can start changing everything around you. So hyperconsciousness is understanding everything at a deeper level. When you change the way you think, you change the way you act, and you change the way you live. So hyperconsciousness is thinking as deeply as humanly possible.
Being 100% responsible for your results.
Yes.
I keep thinking about Peter Griffin blaming Lois for eating too much. Why did you make me eat so much? I have to find that meme. All right. If you guys don't watch Family Guy, the meme will be in the show notes. It's episode 143, momgeek.com/143, or just go to gratitudegeek.com and look for episode 143. There will be a Peter Griffin meme. Why did you make me eat so much?
Oh, why did you let me do this, Lois? Why?
Because it's not her fault that he ate so much, people.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about this whole concept of being a better human.
Okay.
How do you become a better human?
It's the $1 billion question. You start, and there's two ways, right? You can either start by saying, you know what, I'm very, very grateful for who I am as a human, but I know there's a lot of room for my growth. Or you can say, you know what, I've been letting myself down lately, and I really, really want to make sure I am taking advantage of all of the gifts that I have been given. So I think it first starts with awareness. It starts with the understanding and the awareness of, what do you think a better person is? What do you think would make you, quote unquote, a better person? I think it comes from the aspect that if you add more value, you therefore will be a better person. But it comes from a place of extreme ownership. You must own what is.
Ownership, 100% ownership. If you are a person now who blames other people, what are some small little shifts that you can make in your life to take ownership and stop being a blamer? I mean, this is a problem that a lot of folks have. They always want it to be someone else's fault that something happened. Mm-hmm. And in order to become a better human, you have to take 100% responsibility, just as Kevin is saying. So Kevin, what are tiny little baby steps people can take to get over that?
I think the number one step in this is, it's going to seem counterintuitive. You have to start taking ownership for your wins, because when we do not take ownership for our wins, it's very hard for us to not take ownership for our own losses. And from what I have seen, that is the biggest thing in the world. If I sat somebody down and said, give me 5 losses from today, they might say, well, I'm the worst. This is this, blah, 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 blah. If I said, all right, just give me 5 wins. I've done that, and it's gone crickets. And it's very hard to take ownership for losses if you can't take ownership for wins. That's one part. This is the deeper understanding part. If everything else is somebody's fault, you do not have the capability to make it any better. It actually defeats the responsibility on your end. So while that seems like an empowering belief, it's actually taking all of your power away. That understanding really helped me say, okay, in the moment, it feels good to blame Candace. But if it's Candace's fault, I can't do anything about it. And it can't be my responsibility. So I can't actually impact it or change it or influence it in any type of way. So the deeper understanding of that has helped me a lot. And then making sure if you're taking responsibility for your wins, it's way easier to take responsibility for your mistakes or your losses.
I want to talk about imposter syndrome because it's something a lot of us have. Like, we start these podcasts or we start these businesses, and then we get waylaid because we're like, oh, am I really a professional podcaster? Hell yeah, I am really a professional podcaster, but not me. I'm not talking about me. But am I really? So let's talk about that.
It's interesting. I have a unique take on this. I think in the beginning, if you feel like an imposter, it's because you're trying to be somebody other than yourself. Because I don't know if you can really feel like an imposter when you're being yourself. And I tell this to clients all the time. I say, just get rid of the safety net. If you feel like you're an imposter, it's because your expectation of what should happen is different than who you are as a human being. That's part one. I also think that if you're a speaker and you've never spoken before and it's your first time being on stage, let the imposter syndrome motivate you a little bit. Sure, put in a little extra prep work and understand that, yeah, I mean, in a way, you've never done this before. You're new to it. These feelings are going to probably be there, but understand that it doesn't mean, number one, it doesn't mean everybody else is thinking that. Number two, it doesn't mean you're not capable of doing it. And number three, it doesn't mean that you're not capable of learning it in the long run. So I think that really is it. When you're doing something, the beauty of you doing it is you do it in a different way than anybody else walking the face of the earth. Nobody can take that from you. So just lean into who you are and remove the necessity for it to be perfect. The podcast episodes that I like the best are the ones where it's just like, all right, I'm just going to go and see what happens. I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't want to know what I'm going to say, because if I mess up, then I feel like an imposter. Oh, I didn't know that quote. That's not what it's about. It's about you delivering your message in your unique way, and nobody can take that from you. And I don't think you'll feel like an imposter if you're just being who you are.
2010, 2012, maybe 10 years. It was probably 10 years ago. I can't remember the exact year. I started a YouTube talk show. And the very first two women that I interviewed, I interviewed them both at the same time, are named Tanya Bugby and Glenna Griffin. And stay tuned, because no, that was episode 142. So the previous episode, if you want to hear my conversation with those two wonderful ladies, listen to the previous episode from this one. Tanya recently started her own LinkedIn show, and she invited me on the show, and it was live streamed. And I was so out of my comfort zone with the live streaming, because I don't highly edit, but I edit and I, do fancy stuff to my podcast. And I've never done live streaming of something that goes out into the world. I don't think that that's imposter syndrome. I just think that's my personality type. I'm a ID. But, I just did it. I hopped on with her. We did it, and it's out in the world, and everything's fine. Right. So I think that the reason why I brought that up is because I think it's a Richard Branson quote. Even if you don't know what you're doing, say yes to the opportunity, because you never know what you're going to learn how to do it along the way, which is why I love doing organic conversations like this, where I don't really know what we're going to talk about. I got a couple bullet points, but I don't know what we're going to talk about for this next, however much longer we talk to each other. It's just going to be organic, and we're going to have a great time. And that makes it fun. Holy crap. I have gone down a well that is so far apart.
That's good. Do you know what's interesting, Candace? When people send me questions, I don't open them.
Yeah.
I don't want to know. When's the last time you sat down on a park bench and you pulled out a script and said, all right, what's your name? Candace, nice to meet you.
Never.
Okay, let me see what my first, no, that's not how organic conversations are. So I agree. I agree 100%. Sometimes you show up and you say, all right, who would I be here? Am I the type of person who's curious? Am I the type of person who, when I make mistakes, I say, oh my goodness, I can't believe I did that. When I was researching, I told you I research, I saw one of your bloopers on Instagram. And it's like, I love the fact that you posted that, because everybody does that. Not everybody shows it though.
Yeah. I try to post good bloopers every couple of weeks. Because they're fun. And you know what? The bloopers are more fun than the rest of the stuff, really. There are like 3 bloopers so far in this one.
I like it. I can't wait to see. I'll share them away. I promise.
I love it. 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 Let's talk about podcasting, because there are a lot of folks out there who think, oh, I want to be a podcaster. How hard is it? I mean, you've been doing this for a while. 1,000. How many episodes did you say you have?
1,125, I think.
Yeah. So 1125. That's a lot of episodes.
Yeah.
What's some advice that you give to people who are like, I want to be a podcaster?
I would say why do you want to be a podcaster? Is it because it's the new, sexy, easy thing to do? Because if that's why you're doing it, you're wrong. Because it's not the new. It ain't
easy.
And it's not new either. It's actually older than most people think. It's not easy. And is it sexy to be on camera all the time? Yeah, sure. Is editing audio and editing video and doing social media and building an audience and all that stuff sexy? If you think it is, cool, good for you. Most people don't. I would say, number one, why do you want to do it? Why do you want to do it? Number two, ask yourself this simple question. Can I show up consistently for my audience no matter what? If the answer is no, honestly, podcasting probably isn't for you. Or ask yourself, how can I show up consistently for my audience? I really think it can't be about you. It has to be about the audience. It shouldn't be about making money, because you're most likely not going to in the first year, 2 years, 3 years, depending on your journey. I would say really tap into three things, three simple things, and you run with this for the entirety of your podcast. What problem am I solving? What problem, or who am I solving that problem for? And in what unique way am I solving that problem? I would ask yourself those three questions, and I would put that on the wall next to you where you record and stay obsessed with that. And if you do that, honestly, you'll probably be more successful than most, because a lot of people don't have the silo of why they're doing it, and they're all over the place. So those are a couple of tips.
Okay, so you got your why, but what about the topic?
Well, the topic for me comes from like, what is the value you're trying to bring to the world? So for us, we have a 10-word description, and I think it's actually 11 words, but 10 words sounds better. Heart-driven, but no BS, holistic self-improvement for dream chasers. What do? We do self-improvement. How do we do it? Heart-driven, but no BS. Who are we doing it for? Dream chasers. So it really depends on what impact are you trying to have. And when I say what problem are you trying to solve, a comedy podcast solves the problem of boredom. It could solve the problem of depression. It could solve the problem of overwhelm. It can solve a lot of different problems. So it starts with, what problem are you looking to solve? That's the first question. The why under that is maybe how you're doing it, the unique way, but what are you trying to bring to the world? Why is it important to you? It's what is the problem you're trying to solve? That's the question.
I love it. So my niche is, solopreneurs who work all by themselves, who are doing their own marketing, who want to figure out how to build influence in the world. And the way you do that is through gratitude.
Mm.
So yeah, I'm really hyper focused with what my message is about. Yeah.
Yep, very niched.
So if you can't get to that niche, how do you find it?
That's a challenge. It's continuing to hone. So a couple things I always try to tell my clients. I say, who are your listeners? And oftentimes they say, well, I want them to be this type of person. Awesome. Great. Who are they though? Like, who are they actually? Because we have two options. One, you continue niching down to the point where it's just those people, or we decide that we're going to stay where we are and build your audience base around that. You have to get to know your audience, because your audience reveals the answers to who's actually listening. And then you ask yourself one simple question. What is the common theme amongst our audience? For us, we realized it was, number one, dream chasers. People who want more out of life. They're not necessarily entrepreneurs, but they're hungry for knowledge, they're hungry for awareness, and they're hungry for more growth. Cool. Second thing, most of them have low self-worth. Most of them have some sort of past that has made them believe they're not good enough, they're not capable, they don't deserve success, they're not smart, they're not pretty, they're not, insert adjectives there. That are the two through lines, or those are the two through lines that we've really noticed. How do we niche? Every episode we do can be based on self-worth if we want. Every episode is based on, here is your piece of awareness, and this is the tactic to go with it. So I really think the answer to most questions around content is getting to know your audience at an unscalable level. Like, I don't care that it's hard for you to do calls with your audience. It might be the most valuable thing you can do as a small business owner, as a solopreneur, as a micropreneur. It's unreasonably valuable for you.
I love that you are talking about dream chasers and people who have low self-worth in the same sentence, because the folks with low self-worth who are dream chasers, they should embrace the fact that most folks aren't dream chasers. Most folks are happy to live in the life that they are in and not ever chase any dreams, right? And so that's the first step, is understanding that I am special because I'm chasing this dream, where most folks wouldn't do that.
Yeah. It's so important to recognize that. It's so important to recognize that. One of the problems, especially, and it's not across the board, it's not blanket statement, but many of the men in the self-improvement industry, they're speaking to people who have high self-worth and high self-belief of, if you want to make $1 million next year, this is what you have to do. No, that's not where most people start. Most people start with, I don't know if I can even start a business. Never mind make $1 million. I don't know if I'm capable of understanding the technology to start a podcast. So I think that's one of the unique things about our audience and our understanding is, I'm not going to teach you how to make $1 million. Could I, if you wanted to? Sure. In the long run, you could do it. I want to make sure that you actually feel capable and competent, that you can start and you're not going to burn yourself out. And how do we navigate relationships when it comes to personal growth, and how, there's so many things that goes into it. How do we help you shift your identity? It really is understanding your audience, because when you understand your audience, then you can cater your content to your audience, and that's how you end up niching, quote unquote.
Why try to reach for fruit that's at the top of the tree when you have fruit at the bottom of the tree that's already listening?
Yeah.
Low-hanging fruit. As a marketing coach, one of the first questions that I always ask is, well, who's your target audience? And if they say, well, I have no idea who it is, the next question I ask is, who's your favorite client?
Mm.
And then why? So it's the same thing. Who is already listening to the show, and why are they listening to it?
It's a great question. Great series of questions.
Yeah. And plus their eyes go. And when I see them talking about their favorite client, and a little sparkle happens. I'm like, okay, we've got something going on there.
Yeah.
Let's dig deeper into that.
That's awesome. That's a great question. That's a really good question.
Yeah. Okay. So what else do you do besides podcasting then? What else does Next Level University offer?
So this is the interesting part. I always tell people to listen to the podcast because we do 7 episodes a week, and it's always free, and there's no ads, and it's always there. So our
7 episodes.
7 episodes a week.
It just fell over.
And none of them, Candace, are repurpose. That we sit down in the studio and we do 7 15 to 30-minute episodes every week. We will never miss. That is our brand in a nutshell. I will podcast from the hospital if I have to. There will be an episode out, even if it's just one of us. But it's self-improvement in your pocket every day from anywhere on the planet, completely for free. That is our brand. Now, if you come and listen and say, well, I like this podcast, you guys are valuable, I want more though. I want more results, and I want them faster, and I want them bigger. Awesome. We have one-on-one coaching. We have group coaching. We do retreats. We do live events. We have Next Level Web Solutions, which does websites. We have Next Level Podcast Solutions, which does podcasts. Next Level Business Coaching. Next Level Social Media. What happened for us, Candace, is we started this from a place of passion. I want a podcast. If you can't tell, I love podcasting. And the fact that I'm here and I get to do this is 10 out of 10 for me. When we started to turn into a business, it was, what do all entrepreneurs struggle with some point during their journey? And it was, well, they don't know how to do a podcast. Cool, we'll do that. They always have to hire somebody for social media. All right, cool, we'll do that. They have to hire somebody to build their website. All right, cool, we can do that. That's really how the business has grown. We want to cater to our audience. And if we can solve all of the audience's pain points, higher quality than anybody else, that's a really, really, really aligned business based on impact and value. If we can be the one-stop shop for everything that you need, why not? So that's us in a nutshell. Yeah.
That's so much, but
It's
all revolves around your mission.
Yep.
It's all mission focused.
Yep.
I get a lot of folks who ask me how to start a podcast, and I always ask, do the same thing that you did. Why do you want to do blah, blah, blah? And I will highly encourage folks not to start a podcast until they've been a guest on at least 10 shows. So as a person who has this podcast, do you do guest interviews?
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Okay,
No.
but you can still answer this question.
Mm-hmm.
If someone were to be a guest on your show, how would you expect them to show up? What would you expect from them?
So this is a fine line. As themselves, in terms of what they say, the highest quality possible in terms of their setup. So again, we have a show that's been around for a long time. We've had some very high level guests. I would like somebody who has a microphone and they have good lighting and they have good camera, because at the end of the day, I'm trying to help you as much as I'm trying to help myself and the audience. And if you don't have a good setup, it's going to be very hard for me to promote you effectively. I literally got a message from somebody today, Candace. I was on their show and they said, hey, did you share what we sent you? And I said, you didn't send me anything. What am I supposed to share? I'm just going to put a link in my, it doesn't work that way. It has to be something that's going to make us all look good. So I want somebody who's going to be authentically themselves, but also somebody who is a professional in terms of their own standards for the way that they show up.
That's a good answer. That's a good answer. So how many podcast appearances do you make a year, do you think?
I did 245 in the last 80 days.
So 245 guest appearances and 365 episodes.
Yeah. So we'll do 365 a year. I think I average probably one a day, like one episode recording a day, depending on that. That was a really heavy couple months. So yeah, it's probably like anywhere from 30 to 45 a month I'll do.
That is a commitment.
It's a
That's
lot.
a huge
But
commitment.
it's the mission. And this is the other thing too, and this is important to understand. When we're talking about genius zones, like where should you be spending the majority of your time? Mine is podcasting. I love it. It comes easier to me because I love talking. I can literally just sit in this office all day and I don't have to leave. Like, that's great. I don't want to go outside anyway. I like this. I like talking to people and I like spreading the mission. Where if you said to me, I want you to paint 245 portraits in the next 80 days, I'm out. I can't do it. I'm going to burn myself out. It wouldn't be good for me. And just to clarify, I want to make sure I'm as aligned as I can be. Those 245 include our show. So that those aren't just guest appearances. Those are 245 episodes. I want to make sure I'm clear about that.
Okay. That's still a lot.
It is.
And I keep thinking about how in Chinese culture, if you want to become a potter, you have to make 1,000 teacups perfectly, exactly identical before you're allowed to, be a potter.
Okay. I did not know that. I learned something new.
I may be wrong. It may be a different culture. It may be Japanese culture, but it's in order to, and it may be 10,000 and not 1,000, but 1,000 seems more doable. But it's true though. The more you do something, your memory, muscle will kick in. So the more you do podcasting, the better you get at it. Which is why I say be a guest on 10 shows before you launch your own show.
That's fair. It's good because you get the unique perspective from the other side.
And go ahead.
I was going to say, understand too, the importance of solo episodes as a podcaster. The importance of solo episodes, you can literally, so let's do this. Candace chose a topic based on what, I don't know if it was based on what my profile had or based on what she thought would be the most valuable use of our time. But when you sit down as a solo podcaster, you can reverse engineer, okay, what problem am I going to solve for my ideal listener avatar today? That makes it a win-win-win-win because you can make it very specific, very targeted, and very niche. So I always say that two things. Number one, listens come from guests, usually in the beginning. Money comes from solo episodes, usually later on, because your audience is getting to know you at a deeper level. You can repurpose that solo content as content for social media, thus building your expertise. There's a lot of things that go into the differences between a solo and a guest episode.
You just said that on a show where I've done a handful of solo episodes and the rest have all been interviews. But I do understand what you're saying. And it is true because as a solo episode, you are completely narrowing what your message is to the person that is listening. Yeah. Whereas when I'm having a conversation, I have to bring the conversation back to gratitude and relationship marketing.
Right. Yep.
And solopreneurship. And sometimes I'm not talking to someone who understands solopreneurship because they aren't a solopreneur, right? But I have to narrow bring that message back. However, anything you talk about can be related to something else if you do it the right way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're getting to the point where we need to start winding down, which I don't like. But can you share what your favorite marketing tool, tip, or technique is?
Yeah, my favorite, bar none, not close, the one that I think is the highest return on your investment, sending videos to followers. So if Candace follows me, she will get, and you might have already followed me, Candace, I don't know. You will get a custom video that says, hey, Candace, thank you so much for the follow. I appreciate it. Please let me know if there's anything I can do to support you. I'm not saying that just to say it. I'm saying that if you reach out to me, I will do whatever I can to add value to your life. A buddy of mine said that. His name's Mark Metry. He said, it's called scaling the unscalable. Too many people are worried way too much about supply long before they're worried about demand. Will I get to the point where I can't do that? Yes. Until that point, I'm going to try my best to do it. And I'm behind. I have like 50 DMs to send, but it's valuable. That is a valuable use of your time because contextually, nobody else is doing it because it seems like a giant waste of time when it's not. So that is my favorite one, bar none.
My mind is blown. Could you please share how you do that?
Yeah. Somebody follows me on Instagram. I go to their profile. I click send a message. I hold my phone up and I say, hey, blank. It's custom. It's not a template. It's literally, I send a 30-second video to everybody who follows me on Instagram.
Okay. So on Instagram, I get a lot of people who follow me who aren't real people.
Yeah. You got to be careful. And I always say, understand that you are potentially opening the door to some weird conversations. I'm not worried about that as a fit 33-year-old man with martial arts training. I'm not worried about that, but I do tell, and I've told a lot of my female clients, just you might want to be careful with who you send messages to, because unfortunately, and this shouldn't even have to be said, that can send the wrong message to certain people. So yeah, you can be careful.
Because this is such a good idea, I just want to go over a couple of safety things. If the person who followed you doesn't have a public profile, they're not a real person.
Mm.
If the person who follows you has a picture of their cute dog and they say they're a general, they're not a real person. All right. If the person who follows you sends you a message and tells you how beautiful you are, no matter how beautiful you are, they're not a real person. Okay.
Yeah. If they ask you for information, they're not a real person. One of the ones I get all the time is, hey, there's a giveaway going on. Can you just like my profile and click on this link and share it? And it's like, no, I cannot. I don't know who you are. Anytime they're asking you for something, that's why when I send the videos, it's just, I'm not asking. I don't want you to listen to the podcast. I just want you to know I'm here. But yes, you do. You have to be very careful because there's a lot of crap that goes on in DMs, especially LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the absolute worst when it comes to that.
Yeah, it seems like my LinkedIn inbox is filled with just a bunch of people who want to help me produce my podcast. And my favorite is when they say, I see you have 10 episodes.
Yeah, thank you. 10 plus 134, 144. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it.
You can tell they don't do their research very well.
No. Okay. That is such a good tip. And I didn't even know you could send video messages in Instagram.
You can send them on any platform. You could send them on LinkedIn. You can send them on, it has to be mobile though. You can't do it from like a laptop. You might be able to on LinkedIn. Instagram, super mobile, but yeah, I would do that. TikTok, same thing. You can send videos on TikTok too, I think.
Wow. I've stayed away from TikTok. I can't handle that.
I did for a while, but it was like, how much am I leaving on the table? Impact and there's a lot of people there.
I think my ideal client though is not on TikTok.
Fair.
Because I am 20 years older than you.
Fair. Well, I do know that one of my clients is in her mid 50s and she has blown up her TikTok and has changed her life when it comes to coaching. And her clients are older. So it's hard to say. Yeah.
I think you just have to weigh and also ask your current clients, what social media platforms are you on?
Yep. Great question.
That is a great question. Okay. Is there anything that you want to talk about that I didn't ask you about?
No, I think we covered all bases. Is there anything you wish you asked about something that you didn't ask?
Well, let me look. We didn't talk about this little, I wrote down, I write down little notes when we're talking, and I wrote down broke entrepreneur. And which is not as uncommon as people think.
Yeah.
Just because you have the word entrepreneur in your description of who you are doesn't mean that you're super wealthy. So, and I think that has to do with imposter syndrome again. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I will tell you this. I have worked with hundreds of entrepreneurs, and I can tell you that most of them are not making money. So if you're an entrepreneur, especially early, I honestly think broke is attached to that. And that's why I always say I didn't go from leaving my job to where we are. I was $35,000 in credit card debt. It got to the point where when I lived with she was my girlfriend at the time, she's my wife now, I couldn't afford to pay rent. I couldn't get Christmas presents for her 2 years in a row because I was in so much debt that I had no capital to be used. That for most people is going to be par for the course because you're not going to make money for a while. It took us 2 years to make money as a podcast. And I was living off credit cards to get through.
Well, and the statistics are that most businesses, fail after 5 years. And a podcast is a business. Mm-hmm. So you really just have to have that muscle that stick to it muscle.
Yeah. You have to show up.
Learn to live on beans and rice.
And the other thing that we talked about earlier, a good question to ask yourself when you start a podcast is, what is your understanding of business? Because I think a lot of people think, well, I have a podcast, I have a platform, people are going to give me money. No. You have to figure out, what does your actual business look like and how is it set up to make money as the very last step, not the thing after the podcast. There's got to be some nurture things that add value in between.
And people don't give you money.
No.
People don't give you money. They expect something in return for the money.
You give them value and they exchange money for value.
Yes. I love it. Let's talk about limiting beliefs.
Okay.
How do you get over them?
I kind of treat it like if you have an allergy to something, I believe the way that they help you get over that allergy is they introduce a very, 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 very small amount of that allergy into your bloodstream and you start to build up resilience towards it. I treat limiting beliefs the same way. What is your limiting belief? I could never be a speaker. Cool. This is what you do. You ask yourself, what is the least amount outside of my comfort zone that actually is in alignment with what I'm afraid of? I had a person reach out to me recently, Candace. They said the same thing. I could never be a speaker. I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how outside of your comfort zone is it for you to go do a Facebook Live? 12 out of 10. All right, cool. Not going to do that. On a scale of 1 to 10, how outside of your comfort zone is it for you to record a video and show nobody? 0 out of 10. Too easy. What if you just sent me a video? She said 3 to 5 out of my comfort zone. Perfect. Perfect place to live. That is a great way for you to prove to yourself that your limiting belief is only as limiting as you allow it to be. And worst case scenario, something goes horribly wrong. It's not going to break the bank and make you think, oh, you know what? I definitely can't do this. There's not enough pain associated with failure there. So yeah, I really say to people, tell me what it is. I will help you find the lowest barrier to entry to face it. And when you look at that, you're going to realize it's a sock in the closet that's creating a shadow of fear. It's not a monster, most likely.
Also, I think you need to identify what kind of fear of public speaking you have.
Yeah.
If you put me on a stage in front of 10,000 people with a microphone, I'm good to go. But you put me in a room with 10 people and I have to talk to each person individually.
Interesting.
I'm not so good to go.
Interesting. It's a great point.
So there are different kinds of public speaking.
Yes.
But as an excellent example. So the way you were talking about how you introduce a little at a time, I think that's called homeopathic medicine. And a lot of, I don't know if it's one of those alternative kinds of medicine, but the concept is that you introduce a little at a time to boost your immune system or boost your so I'm calling this your homeopathic approach to overcoming limiting beliefs.
I got to do some research to make sure that's actually how people do it, because I use it as an example. I see how it works and it's like, all right, I should probably make sure it's like scientifically the way it works. So that's the motivation and inspiration I need to do it.
So here's the clarification. The science on this isn't sound.
No, the analogy is waterproof though. I just can't prove its scientific backing.
Yeah, it's a great analogy.
Thank you.
And so Neil deGrasse Tyson is like my dream person that I would love to interview. And I really absorb a lot of what he does. And he recently said that people would, and this is how to be a better person, on the topic of being a better person. So when scientists have an argument, they approach it as you're right or I'm wrong. I'm wrong or you're right, or we're both wrong. When non-scientists have an argument, it's either you're right and I'm wrong, or I'm right and you're wrong. Without the possibility that both people could be wrong. So as the scientific approach to this homeopathic thing is either we're both right, we're both wrong, or neither. Yeah. So don't take it. So if you're listener, I will have done a little research in this as well. Take it with a grain of salt.
Yes.
But in terms of being a better human, don't always look at things as if there's a right or wrong. There's a, you want to add to that? How do you feel about Neil deGrasse Tyson as well?
I love Neil deGrasse Tyson. Huge fan. I've watched him on Joe Rogan many, many, many times. I am a huge fan. The way he explains complex topics, his voice, the way how animated he is. Huge fan. You have to understand that there are several pieces and sides and perspectives of each truth. There are several. And what I have found, and it's interesting, most people are never fully wrong, but they're never fully right. You can always be more right, because all right is accurate. More accurate, more accurate, more accurate. So just because you're not fully accurate does not mean you cannot be more accurate. And you have to understand that as you learn something more and more, accuracy improves as well. It's the reps. If you put episode 1 Kevin on this podcast, Candace, it would have been a ripe piece of garbage. But my accuracy has improved over 1,125 reps. And honestly, in 1,125 more, I'll be better, hopefully, if I'm learning anything.
Yeah. And it goes back to that 1,000 teacups.
One or 10,000.
Or
depending on-
10,000. 10,000.
Depending on the
people.
science.
Yeah. Well, curly-haired dude who writes a lot of books. He used to write for the New Yorker.
What has he written?
Malcolm Gladwell.
Oh, I was going to say that.
Yeah, 10,000 hours. He says 10,000 hours. It's the same
Says
thing.
10,000. Yes, but that has actually been disproven.
Has it?
Yeah. So that's
Tell me that.
I'm not 1,000% certain on the science, but it's what that was quoted on. That's not dependent on certain quantum abilities. That's not dependent, or it's not factoring in certain things are easier to practice than other things. The term that they're using now, I believe, is deliberate practice. People who get really, really good at stuff are the people who practice through deliberation, like deliberate practice. You can practice something for 10,000 hours and not be hyper-focused on improvement, and you will not be an expert on it. So I think they've disproven that, but it's good science to look at.
Well, there will be notes there in the show notes. Will be a little research into that as well, because I like to put research in the show notes. Whenever we talk about something, I will always want to make sure that I back it up with facts and resources.
I appreciate your commitment to that.
I do want to ask you this.
Please.
So, basketball players who imagine themselves shooting a perfect basket while using meditation, does that count in the 10,000 hours of on purpose practice?
Probably. There's scientific proof from that too. Yeah, probably. Yeah. I think it's one of those things where I could speak for 10,000 hours, but if I'm not prepping, doing the episode, reflecting, and then perfecting based on that, that's like the process of improvement. It's very interesting. It's very interesting. I think it requires an ultimate amount of you trying to improve every single time you do it. So I would say probably.
Yeah, I like that answer. Probably.
Probably,
right,
maybe.
I have used up a lot of your time today and learned a lot, and we've put together a really good episode. So thank you. Thank you for really heart-focused answers. And we had some fun too. So for whom or what are you most grateful? This is your moment of gratitude.
I would say today in this moment, I am most grateful for my wife. She is very, very supportive of what was a kid with a huge dream who locks himself in the office and grinds his face off every day to bring this mission out to the world. I'm very grateful for her support, her understanding, and the fact that she believed in me long before I believed in myself.
Thanks for joining us this week for Gratitude Geek, the relationship marketing podcast helping micropreneurs find your micro influencer magic. Your time is valuable, and I am ever so grateful that you chose to spend your time with us today. Be sure to check the show notes at gratitudegeek.com, episode 143, for links to all the groovy resources mentioned today, and of course, to connect with Kevin Palmieri. And while you're there, why not subscribe to the show on Audible, iTunes, Stitcher, or any of your favorite podcast players. Our theme music is track 14 by Rev Brock and Solar. I've been your host, Candice Rodardi. Join me on my mission to spread gratitude, sow seeds of appreciation, and harvest a bounty of generosity and kindness. Stay groovy, my friends.
Stay groovy, my friends.